Good afternoon or morning, wherever you're located, and welcome to today's webinar, where we're discussing how you can succeed with an Element Unify free trial. My name is Juanita, and I'm a member of the marketing team here at Element. And now I am very excited to welcome today's speakers, who have a combined more than 40 years of experience in industry and are both colleagues here at Element. Our first speaker, Steve Beamer, is our VP of Customer Success and works with customers to guide them on their digital transformation journey. In addition to his 30 years of experience in industry, he's a former Element Unify customer who saw the value of the software firsthand. Steve has led a large digital transformation effort at BP and understands operations excellence processes and systems. In addition, he's had roles at site and executive leadership levels at ExxonMobil, Peabody Energy, and Hess. Our second speaker, Mostafa Safdanejad, is a forward deployed engineer at Element. He has a PhD in chemical engineering and more than 10 years of experience in the chemical, oil and gas, and energy sectors. Starting out as a process engineer, he transitioned to a data science role where he developed innovative data models to predict power plant demand and identify the optimal response required to meet that demand. Mostafa applies his extensive experience collaborating with Element customers daily to help them derive value from their IT and OT data. Welcome, Steve and Mostafa. And Steve Beamer, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Juanita. And you're going to pass me the screen. We can do that.
You should be good now.
I'll briefly go over the agenda, and then we'll jump right into it. So I'm going to do a quick overview of what Element Unify does. We're not going to look at any software today. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what it does. And then Mostafa and I are going to talk about what's it really take to succeed? How do you get value out of this free trial? What are other people doing with their free trials? You know, some successes that people have had out of this experience. And then we'll take a look at an outcome of what people do with Element Unify, just to give you a more concrete example, and then we'll answer any questions you may have. So with that, let's get right into it. So Unify is about helping you get value from your operational data. And you have all these sources of data, but the real heart of the operations is the real-time sensor data, right? They're measuring what's going on in real time. And then you have these sources of value up above that are what you need to run the business, to optimize, to troubleshoot, to manage work. But the real-time data really doesn't have a lot of context with it. It really only has, you know, a time of value and maybe a little bit of metadata like engineering units and things. But to make that data more useful, you need to combine it with data from other systems. And this is typically, the spaghetti is how we've done it till now. We've basically built special data sets and harmonized data between different systems to get what we want in an output that people can use to make decisions. It's complex to manage, it's complex to govern, and it's hard. It's hard to keep it up to date. It takes a lot of resources. So there's a better way. And the technology revolution and cloud and things have brought improvements that are way beyond what we could have done even 15 years ago. And now with something like Element Unify, Unify is a tool that builds a graph model of your data set. So, you know, I've likened it to calling it the Google map for your data to help my managers understand when I was a customer. But basically it maps each of those relationships between your engineering data and your real-time sensors, between your engineering data and your maintenance data. And then you can connect for each of your use cases to one thing instead of to 2, 3, 4, or 5 things to get what you're looking for and drive the output that you're after. So I'm going to hand over to Mostafa now, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what makes an Element Unify trial successful. Mostafa.
Thanks, Steve and Juanita. So what we are seeing as a successful trend across our existing customers as well as free trial users is they tend to come in as a dedicated team during their experience with Element Unify. The team includes different roles. One major role that we are seeing included in all of these teams is a subject matter expert, someone who knows the operation, someone who knows the data, who knows the assets, somebody who, if you have any question, you can go to and ask those questions about the data. The second role we are seeing is a data analyst or a data scientist or a data engineer. The title really differs from one company to another, but somebody who knows how to extract insight from the data and be able to work with the data, integrate them into one unified view and a context-rich data model so that they can use it for downstream applications that we'll talk about in the next slides. And the last type of role is an IT specialist or someone who has access to systems and data. So data access doesn't become an issue further down the road when people start using Unify. Another advice we have for our existing customers as well as our free trials is come prepared with a use case in mind, and ideally a high impact use case that you think about. There are several aspects to this when you're thinking about the use case. One is that when you have a high impact use case for this free trial user, obvious result is that you return value to the business as at the end of this free trial use of the software. The other aspect to this is that when you're thinking about the use case, you want to also think about what do you want to do with this at the end of this trial. Do you want to roll it out to the rest of the organization, or do you want to use this same data model that you have created for different use cases, different applications within the same business unit or within the same plan? You need to be thinking about these use cases, what you want to do with them in the future, so that you can get value from the software. And also, at the end of these free trials, you have more buying powers when you go to your managers asking for a new software. Before I jump into the support for leadership team, I also want to emphasize why it is important that you come with your own ITOT data, and that can include historian tags from PI, from IP21, from PhD, or asset information from SAP, Maximo, or any similar data set, or come with your design data, PNID data. What you can get from bringing over such a variety of data sources is a really powerful use case that includes context from each of them, but at the same time, you also see how powerful the unified software is in extracting information from each of them and then integrating and creating a context-rich model for downstream applications. I kind of touched on the support from the leadership team. Well, you may ask yourself, it's a free trial. Why do I need to have support from my leadership team for a free trial? Or you may understand that this is a demand or this is a requirement before asking for a software, but you may struggle engaging your management team and asking for a new tool into your organization. So Steve, you have been a customer, or you were a customer of Element before. Can you elaborate a little bit what kind of challenges your team had when they came to you asking for a new role and how you helped them?
Sure. One of the big challenges is this is new technology and people don't understand it. And most managers are not the youngest, most tech savvy people in your company. And so, the first thing they see is, okay, here comes some more people who want to spend money. And of course, there's always people that want to do something and there's never enough money. So I think it's helpful when you start with the team, as Mustafa said, and the whole team comes together and says, hey, this is something we really can really help us and we can really get a lot of value out of it. But the other thing is you may have to tell the story in a more simple form for the leaders. Like I mentioned in the earlier slide, I told people I was building the Google map to our data, right? Because when you go somewhere you haven't been before or you're not familiar with, you need to know, where do I park my car? Where do I find a Starbucks? Where do I get lunch? And those are the kinds of things we do with your industrial data. We map them all together so that they provide a coherent story. And then the other thing we like to do with companies is we like to talk about think big, start small, and go fast. As you're going through this free trial experience, what you want to try to do is think about, how would I build this for somebody else after I did my free trial? How would I build it for another plant, another site, to deploy it across the whole company? So as you're designing, if you think about those things first, like don't put the local logo on the dashboard, put the company logo on the dashboard. Don't use local terminology, use the company standard terminology. So that when you want to go to the next place after the free trial and you say, hey, I want to deploy this and I want to go fast, that you're set up to do that. You can reuse all the pipelines and the things that you build in the software, and all you have to do is connect the local data to it. Okay, we're going to move now back to Mustafa and have some common use cases and applications that we see in these free trials.
So we are seeing three major trends that people turn into Unify to use it for their application and data needs. The first major one is data modeling at a scale. Many times people have already started doing some work in-house just to prototype the data modeling. And here, when they were trying to do the data modeling, that they are mostly focused on a use case, a very limited use case to prototype the value that they can get from developing such a data model. But when you think about an enterprise level, then that's becoming a challenge, and they tend to use Unify to help them with the data modeling at a scale at an enterprise level and be able to create those cool applications that we can see on the right based on these data models. Another common theme that we are seeing is that people tend to use different platforms to manage their data or metadata that can take into account template creation, hierarchy creation, data transformation or data reshaping or data wrangling. So this is becoming a challenge again, mainly because if something changes at one of these metadata, then you have to maintain the other systems as well. So people use Unify as a central place to manage all of it. As you might have seen in the previous webinars, we have one place for managing the templates for the data reshaping and data transformation, hierarchy creation. Everything is in one place, so you have to worry about just updating one place if there's a change in the system. And all the downstream application will be propagated from the data model, the latest data model from the same system. Another interesting trend that we are seeing is that when people try to derive analytics, they often find that the data sources from historians or from assets and the tags relevant to each of them don't correlate well, meaning that one system has a different naming convention than the other. And a lot of times, because of the mergers and acquisitions, different plans or different sections of an organization have a completely different structure for their tag names. So we are seeing it becoming more and more demanding for our customers and free trial users to use Unify to first restructure their tag names to a corporate standard or an ISA 95 or an AKZ standard, So they build the foundation right before they tend to create all these downstream applications, which used to be taking more time than before. So all this data engineering work that people do with Unify creates a data model, and this data model can be used in many different applications that you're seeing on the right as 5 common thread. We're seeing that asset health monitoring, predictive maintenance, process optimization, and anomaly detection, automated OE reporting, and even energy and utility demand forecasts are commonly used across our customer and free trial users as the outcome from this free trial and what they want to build from the data model from Unify. So here in this case, the data model from Unify is the one that connects all these different data sources and the actual data coming from these data sources together to build a single view of all the assets, all the time series data, all the work orders, operator rounds, whatever the data source is. This data model connects all these different data sources together.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the success stories then we've had for some of the trial users. Mustafa, you've worked with several of our users. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So in this webinar, I want to mention 3 of the recent trial users. The first one is with an OEM, probably one of the largest OEMs out in the market, where they were trying to create tag mapping. And essentially tag mapping in this case meant to associate the tags to the appropriate assets. And this tag mapping was ultimately feeding into an equipment monitoring and reliability ecosystem of this OEM. So what they found out at the end of this free trial was that when they do this task with Unify and compare it to the exact same task when they were doing it with their traditional approach, which in this case was just hiring external consultants, they realized that with Unify, they get the job done 44% faster than their traditional approach. For the second company that I want to talk about, they were trying to implement an enterprise performance management software that they owned, and they needed a data model behind the scene to feed into this software. And they also had something developed in-house, and when they compared their results with what they can do from Unify or with Unify, and they realized that the amount of work needed to do the same task with Unify is 95% less in terms of the man-hour needed than their in-house developed application. And as the last result that I want to share from a packaging company, they were trying to create an OSI soft PI asset framework model that they used as the foundation for a manufacturing data platform. So in this case, this is interesting because they came to us asking for a better and more efficient way to create these asset framework models, because with their traditional approach, it took them about 4 to 5 weeks to create an asset framework model. Whereas when they did the same job with Unify, it was done in about a week or a week and a half. So it turned out 70% less man-hour to do the same job when they did it with Unify. So these are some metrics that our customer and free trial users shared with us. But a few codes that you can see on the bottom of the screen also was interesting here. One thing that I want to emphasize is self-service analytics. So everyone has an idea how to optimize an operation, how to make the operation work better, how to improve the business. But the challenge is that that idea usually includes several data sources. And it's really difficult, given the time horizon that the operation people specifically have, to implement the idea and connect all these different data sources and try to relate these different data sources together. But what Unify enables these customers is data democratization, meaning that you create a context-rich data model and you expose it, and everyone with an idea can use the same data, the same view of the data, to implement their idea in the plant or for the operation. The other thing that was noticeable here from the users was that what you do in Unify is very traceable. You can audit what's happening inside the data transformations. You can document all of those. And that also enables knowledge transfer and enables better governance, process governance here, especially knowing that a lot of times you have new hires or new consultants or SIs that come in to help. You need to be able to transfer this knowledge that you have put together to create a data model and pass it to the rest of the organization. And the last one that I want to touch here is really a reusable structure for similar deployment. So you create a data model, essentially you transform your data. You can use this same structure or series of transformations to deploy other regions or other business units. So you don't really have to do much about similar deployment. You just need to reconnect to the new data sources from a different plan, and you're good to go to redeploy this same data model and this same application like asset health monitoring to another plant.
All right, so let's make this a little bit more practical. Okay, we've organized the data. Let's just take a look at an example of a dashboard view, and this one is in Power BI. So once you've built this data model that you can use anywhere, this is one that I built when I was a customer. But what we did with this was we brought in, what this did was it looked at demands on safety equipment, and it calculated whether they were meeting their requirement or not. Was the safety valve closing in the amount of time it was supposed to close in? But what you see about this dashboard is we had to bring in data from the CMMS, the maintenance system. We had to bring in data from the engineering system. What's the limit? How long does the safety case allow me to have that valve close? I could see the number of work orders against the valve that was not meeting its intent. And I could calculate the time the valve took to close by looking at the alarm and event log out of the control system and saying the valve got a signal to close, the valve indicated that it was closing, and then the valve indicated it was fully closed. And you could calculate the time difference off the timestamps. And so then we would associate the PI tags to the valves. So I could see in my data historian which sensors belong to that safety equipment, which we're measuring that process. I could see the alarms and events, and I could plot a little graph of how long it took to close on the last three closes, the last three times it closed, and I could see open and close work orders. So if I got a red indication up here that a valve wasn't closing in the right amount of time, I could easily see whether there was already a work order written against it to make that repair, or if I needed to go write one immediately. And so this was about, bringing a lot of data sources together. Here we had the engineering information, the data historian, the maintenance system, and the alarm and event log out of the control system. So we had 4 different sources together. That would have been really hard to do if we didn't have Unify. And because we were thinking big and starting small and going fast, once we built this for one asset, we quickly deployed it to the rest of the other 42 assets that we had. So it was very quick to, it took about 6 weeks to develop this and get it in the shape the users wanted to see it. And then it took about a quarter to deploy it to the whole company. So that's the power of what can be done. We have a few minutes left. I'd like to see if there's any questions. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box on your GoToWebinar, And if you don't have questions, then we will close out the webinar in a moment. And then I'll hand over to Juanita to close us out.
All right. Well, thank you so much. If there are no questions today, we really appreciate your time. A reminder that Element Unify is free to try for 30 days. Take advantage of this opportunity to see how the software can work for your organization. During the trial, you will have access to training materials, the Element team, and of course, Steve Beamer, who can help you engage, or who will also engage with your leadership team if you need it, to try and ease that process. If you're not ready to start a trial at this time, but you have questions, please reach out on our website and we'll be happy to discuss your use case. Finally, we'd love to hear from you. Please engage with us on LinkedIn. You can follow our company page. You can tag us. You can connect with our speakers who will be happy to answer your questions or respond to your comments. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.